Welcome, everyone. Today is the part two of the newsletter, the reading newsletter for the week. Today we'll be reading Other Sharp as Knives, part two of chapter 4. Now, I had previously read the first part of the chapter, and it was really cool. And we'll just be following up and finishing off the latter end of that. The big part I really wanted to say and comment on was just how well tension was built throughout the whole chapter. And I really think it's worth a look at. So, I'll put a link down in the comments below to go check out that earlier video because it's really quite impressive of how just not a boring scene by any scene. It's actually the contrary. It's very interesting, but how you don't need a lot to happen to make a scene boring. It's just choosing what you decide to focus on. And there was some really, really powerful choices that were made in the writing that I thought was really great. So we're going to get into the second part of it. But before we do, like and subscribe if you find these videos helpful. It really helps get things out in the algorithm and helps things spurring out. And it just really helps me out. And so it's super important that we can get that going. I also want to say, thanks for watching this far, and let's get into it. So for the video, we are instead as sharp as knives. Now, so the first part of the chapter, if you guys remember, it was Venezia. She was coming in, and she's basically just getting undressed. And while she comes in, she learns that there's a new slave girl in the household, and her husband, who she does not love, is basically, got this new slave girl because he's been needing some attention while his wife's away. They don't have a very good marriage. And then their maid servant, Alessia, is helping out Venezia. She's getting undressed. Now, Venezia has these seizures that are issues that she has. And she mentions it as they're kind of going through the drama, and you're learning more about the tension between her and her husband and how she's wanting to run for election, and how their marriage is very much a political one. And then right as the conversation's getting heated, seizure begins to happen. And that's where we cut off in the last chapter. And so this is where we're starting off, where there's a seizure about to happen. So if you read a part of it, you saw it, but now let's get it going and see what happens. So dread tensed her muscles. Slowly, so slowly, she set the bowl on the windowsill and turned around. Try what? Lazaro held his hands out, waiting for Venezia to continue. 10 seconds. Her thoughts slowed, muddled. Her breathing grew fast, shallow. Anxiety filled her mind, constricting every corner. Lazaro kept talking, but she heard no sound. Venezia blinked. Her hearing had cut out. 5 seconds. She opened her mouth but couldn't form words. I'm about to have a seizure. Her brain could string the words together, but her tongue had forgotten language. Get out, she wanted to say. Leave me alone. He was the last person she wanted to be with right now. It hit now. It hit. All of her muscles contracted. Seize! Lazaro finally understood, but there was nothing he could do. He flapped his mouth and waved his arms to try to get her to sit. I'm dying. Make it stop. It wasn't true, but fear ricocheted around her mind. Lying, deceitful terror. Thoughts were disjointed, scattered. They raced, dripping with terror. She wanted to curl in a ball. Alessia. She needed Alessia. She had to focus, had to fight. She walked a ship's rail, and a gale buffeted her, trying to push her over the edge in a full convulsive fit. She could keep her footing if she could show her mind she was still in control. She opened and closed her fingers, rolled her wrist back and forth. How long had it been? Time stretched and contorted. An eternity and mere seconds filled her. Alessia and Kari ran into the room. This is the slave and the servant girl, by the way. Everyone had tried to get her to sit, but she focused on her hands, on her fingers, on a certain dominion over her body. She teetered on the precipice, certain that gravity would pull her down into a churning, hungry sea. But finally the episode faded. Sound returned, a room full of panicked voices, and she could take a long, deep breath. Exhaustion barreled into her like a monstrous wave. She stumbled toward her bed. Alessia rushed forward with a cotton corn canto stitched blanket. Lazaro ripped it from her. Venezia crawled under the covers, and he tucked the healing, empowered quilt around her. He smoothed her back hair away from her face. You push your health too hard, Amore May. You're not as strong as you think you are. What if, he glanced at the maids, out. They turned to leave. Alessia, Venezia slurred, come back in 10 minutes. Alessia forced a smile. Of course, Sierra May. Venezia yawned and her body sunk into the mattress. It cradled to her like a mutter. What if what, Lazaro? What if you had cotton corn santo put in your arteries, just a bit in each arm? That's heresy. She managed to muster strength into her words. I won't even consider it. But these seizures handicap you. They're the reason your body failed to carry out our 4 children. Ugh, that is brutal, bro. Way to bring it to the fray. Okay. He smoothed her hair again and tucked the blanket around her shoulders. I hate seeing you suffer like this. He hadn't minded making her suffer for the first 8 years of their marriage. Venezia reached under her pillow and curled her fingers under the hilt of a dagger. Right, because this chick has daggers everywhere. She'd finally learned how to fight him off 5 years ago. What? That sounds really gross and scary, and now it's changing the context. If only she could leave permanently, move back into the Albizzi home. It wasn't culturally sanctioned, but Venezia had never been one to hold the social mores, except when it comes to heresy. But damn it all, she needed him. She'd only married him because as a former doce, he could help her. He could help her reach her goal, could help her finally best her brother and take the sash and crown for herself. Then she could leave him behind, go live in Palazzo Dogal and leave him to his sex slaves and this dreadful house. If she didn't win this election, she'd be stuck with him for 4 more years. 4 years of lies and adultery and feigned love, but not abuse, not anymore. Venezia clutched the knife and pretended to be calmed by her hateful husband. Whoa-wee! Okay. This lady does not like her husband. Wow. At all. Okay, so yeah, talk about a scene so with part 1 and part 2, this is a really good example of how you can take a scene there's not a lot going on. A lady walks in a room, she says hi to her husband, her servants, has a seizure, right? Like, that's not something you would normally, like, on the surface, be like, oh, this needs to be a critical part of the book. But it is, because of what the author chooses to focus on throughout the scene. Mainly the relationship dynamic between the husband and the wife becoming very clear. And what's cool is you see the dynamic constantly play out, especially in an earlier chapter. You see it play out fairly dramatically. And you see examples of that all over the place. But what really takes the cake and what makes it really awesome is just this idea of how she's been able to, she demonstrates her sort of her dislike for her husband, but it's at the end where she really comes around and like summarizes it all. So you've basically seen the dynamic play out, and then you can get an understanding of, okay, she doesn't love this guy. Why is she with him? It's kind of political and contractual. And then here we have this paragraph that sort of ties it neatly into a bow, right? She only married him because, and it's just a paragraph, but it makes it very clear. So there's so much clarity that comes. And then we never hear directly of any abuse or any sort of like forceful incentives. And, for the longest time, I just thought, oh, okay, this guy doesn't love this lady or whatever. But then the fact that she clutches the knife under the mattress and stuff and like calls her hateful husband, because it seems like she's on a very different wavelength than this guy. And she definitely feigns love. And yeah, this is a very, very sort of twisted dynamic. And I think especially after what she's going through, I think it's very interesting that she would have Imelda or sort of play this powerlessness, knowing that Imelda's going to marry into another husband, another guy as well. So I think that's a very interesting dynamic that'll be fun to see play out. And so these are sort of the expectations that are being built within this chapter. In terms of like powerful feedback, I don't think this was a really well written chapter. I would say probably outside of the prologue, this is actually one of the stronger chapters I've read so far. This is a real banger. And especially moving into a new POV character, I think this is just an incredible twist. So I'm excited to see more come from this. And so, yeah, this is a good lesson where you see that by choosing to focus on certain dynamics, even a scene that's not very palpable or have a lot going on can be very strong because it's setting the framework of those three pillars: character, setting, and then ultimately the premise. And this does a good job in setting, in terms of implementing character, obviously, because we're learning Venezia, and then through the dynamic with her husband, we see the setting of, how their whole dynamic is coming across and how it works. And this is all really, really good in terms of helping us put things together and really come together and sort of come to an understanding of what exactly is Venezia's role in the book. And so we see now that she's a status climber. She's trying to become Doge, and we don't necessarily know her motivations for it, but we know that that is what she's going for. And it's very crystal clear why. And we're seeing to the extent she's willing to go to it so much that she'll marry someone she does not love, even when she's got to have knives and go through seizures and be in very helpless situations to do it. So this builds sort of a ruthless sentiment to her, but also it's captivating and it makes us want more. So I'm really excited to see more from this. Now, if you want to learn more about the writing from this in implementing this, feel free to check out some of the links before and submit a post. I'd love to see anyone's ideas for anything you guys have. If you want to get your stuff read, especially first chapters and submissions, I love to read new stuff on the channel and get feedback and setting and getting more comments on it. So please like and subscribe if you found this useful and there were some points that you found that really pointed out. And feel free to comment on things that I can improve on and do better. And yeah, I hope you guys found value in this and continue to come back for more. And stay happy, stay healthy, and remember, you're the author of your own life, so keep writing. Peace.